In this video, I'm going to talk about the different methods that the US military used in Vietnam to try to overcome the challenges that this particular war uh, caused the US military. So, what we know in terms of issues that the US military faced in Vietnam was that it was very difficult to figure out who the enemy was because they blended in with the civilian population and were not a organized military with like uniforms. And then also we know that the jungle made it extremely difficult to fight, not only because of the landscape and terrain, but also because it allowed a lot of cover for the VC to hide and utilize their tunnels in. So the solution that the US military uses is to implement these three methods in the war to try to help neutralize those problems. So, search and destroy, using napalm, and then using Agent Orange. So, the whole idea with search and destroy was to try to search out the enemy. So, try to find the VC in these villages where they were hiding because they could not easily identify these communist supporters in the South. The US would do these raids on um, the small villages. And if they found VC or if they found that they were providing support for the VC, then the US military would destroy those villages because they were connected to the Viet Cong. So you can see here some images of the US military burning villages that were found to contain Viet Cong or to be helping the Viet Cong. One of the issues that we see is that it makes it difficult for the US military to achieve one of their goals, which is winning the hearts and minds of the South Vietnamese, because they're also burning down these villages. So the US military was in a really tough position. They had to try to find the enemy. And with that war of attrition, they were using search and destroy to try to like wear down the Viet Cong. But at the same time, they were destroying the homes of South Vietnamese who were not Viet Cong. So it's almost an impossible position to be able to achieve both of those goals with the methods that were being used. The second method is napalm, which is a gasoline based bomb. When the bomb explodes, it splatters that jelly like gasoline substance and then that ignites. So this was used to clear large areas. So you could napalm a village, for example, or you could use it to help with like the jungle to clear large areas that way as well. Um, just like with search and destroy, there's going to be civilians that are affected by napalm, and you can see some examples of that in the bottom two pictures. So hard to win the hearts and the minds of people when there's people that are getting caught in these napalm attacks. Doesn't look like the US is the good guy here, even though the US is using these methods to try to address the issues they're facing in fighting this war. The third method is Agent Orange. So, Agent Orange is a leaf killing chemical or an herbicide. You can see in the far right picture, they would use like crop dusters to drop large amounts of this chemical throughout South Vietnam. The map on the right, if you look at the zoomed in area, this is concentrated in South Vietnam because this is where, again, the US is trying to identify the enemies of the VC. The tunnels are in the south, the booby traps are in the south, like all of those things. They're trying to get rid of the jungle to make it a little easier for the US to fight. So all of these red areas are areas where there were large amounts of um, Agent Orange dropped. And then you can see before and after effects of this chemical. So we understand why this method was used to try to neutralize the issue of the jungle and fighting the war. But again, this is devastating the landscape in South Vietnam. And for the people who live in South Vietnam, this doesn't necessarily look like it's helping them. In addition to the immediate effects of Agent Orange, there were also some very significant long term health effects for people who are exposed to Agent Orange. Not only US Marines who would be on patrols and be covered in Agent Orange while these planes would drop it overhead, but also the people of South Vietnam. So you can see here children who were not a part of the war, they were not VC, but because their parents were exposed to large amounts of Agent Orange, either while the mother was pregnant or prior to, um, they see a lot of birth defects that are happening as a result of that high level of exposure. In addition to birth defects, there's increased instances of cancer and psychological and neurological issues. Again, these problems were experienced by American soldiers as well. We see it in larger amounts in the South Vietnamese because obviously they lived in that area and the soil and water tables contained this chemical dioxin from the large quantities of Agent Orange that were dropped. So there seems to be a higher impact among the people of South Vietnam, but it is seen on both sides. So when you're looking at these methods and you think about our goals, do they help us achieve the goal? Why were they necessary? How does it relate to the issues that the US was facing when trying to fight in Vietnam?